The street fair was alive with colors, laughter, and a hum of chatter that echoed through the downtown square of Chicago. Food stalls filled the air with the scent of roasted corn and cinnamon pastries. Street performers painted joy on the faces of children, and lovers strolled hand in hand beneath strings of glowing lanterns. Among the crowd was a quiet woman with almond-shaped eyes and an apron dusted in flour. Her name was Mia Carter. Mia was a baker. Not just by trade, but by heart. Every loaf she kneaded, every cookie she shaped, carried a whisper of her late mother's warmth. Life had never given Mia much. Her small shop, Sweet Hope, stood on a narrow lane, tucked between a pawn shop and an old bookstore. Business was slow, but her spirit was gentle and resilient. That afternoon, Mia had set up a humble booth, offering samples of her honey oat muffins to passers-by. Her long brown hair was tied in a low ponytail, and though she wore no makeup, her smile was soft and sincere. She stood alone behind the table, greeting each person with a quiet grace that masked the ache of her strained finances. It had taken her weeks of saving to afford the vendor fee, and even then, she borrowed a folding table from her neighbor and baked late into the night to prepare her samples. Across the square, Victor Langston, a ruthless event organizer and known socialite, barked orders into a headset. The fair was his annual charity project, though few believed charity had anything to do with it. Dressed in an expensive tailored suit, he scanned the vendors like a hawk eyeing prey. He was well known for his obsession with perfection, and his arrogance knew no bounds. Mia had unknowingly set up outside her assigned zone, just a few feet off. Victor stormed over, red-faced. "You can't be here," he snapped. Mia, startled but polite, said, "I'm so sorry. I must have misunderstood the instructions. I'll move it right away." Victor looked at the line forming near her booth. "You're drawing a crowd and breaking the rules. You people think rules don't apply to you." "You people?" she asked quietly. "Vendors who think a sob story will earn them pity points," he said, rolling his eyes. People began to glance over. Some pulled out phones. Before Mia could explain again, Victor slapped the tray of muffins off her table. A few gasps rang out. Mia stepped back, stunned. "Please don't." And then, in front of dozens of witnesses, Victor raised his hand and slapped her across the cheek. The sound of the hit echoed. Silence fell. Mia stumbled but didn't fall. She touched her face, eyes wide not in pain, but disbelief. The crowd stared, frozen. Then came a voice. Deep. Calm. Dangerous. "Touch my wife again, and see what happens." The crowd turned. From between the sea of shocked onlookers, a tall man in a navy blue suit walked forward. His presence was electric. His face was known in every finance magazine across the country. His name was Christopher Hale. Billionaire investor. Media recluse. And now, husband to a flower-dusted woman at a street fair. Victor blinked. "Wait, what?" Christopher stepped beside Mia, wrapping a protective arm around her. He looked at the red mark on her cheek, then met Victor's eyes with a glare so fierce it sent a chill through the summer air. "This woman," he said, "built her life from ashes. She buried her mother with her own hands and kept a bakery alive when banks wouldn't give her a dime. She wakes up at 3 a.m. to feed people who forget to feed themselves. And she did it all without ever asking for pity. So yes, she is my wife. Not because she needed saving. But because I did." Victor stammered. "I didn't know." "No, you didn't. Because people like you never take time to know anyone unless they wear money like a badge." The crowd erupted into murmurs, some cheering, others still recording. Mia stood in silence. Her eyes shimmered with tears, but not from pain. From the quiet fury of humiliation. And the even louder warmth of being defended. Christopher leaned close and whispered, "I'm sorry I wasn't here sooner." She whispered back, "You were right on time." The next morning, Mia's story was everywhere. Billionaire defends street vendor wife after public assault. Christopher Hale shuts down elitism with one sentence. Victor Langston was fired from his company by noon. The charity board issued a public apology. But for Mia, the real shift wasn't in headlines. It came in the form of people. A woman who'd watched the scene unfold brought her daughter to Sweet Hope the next day. "I wanted my little girl to meet someone brave," she said. Mia smiled and offered her a warm chocolate chip cookie. A man in a sharp gray suit walked in that afternoon and offered to help expand her bakery. "Not as a business move," he said, "but because the world needs more places like yours." Soon, media vans lined up outside Sweet Hope. Journalists wanted sound bites. Influencers wanted selfies. But Mia remained unchanged. She still arrived before sunrise, still made her mother's cinnamon rolls by hand, and still greeted every customer by name. Her story inspired thousands. Emails flooded in from around the country, single mothers, widows, students, bakers. People saw themselves in her. They didn't just see a woman who was slapped. They saw someone who stood tall afterward. She began hosting free baking classes for local teens. Each week, they learned not just recipes, but lessons about resilience, patience, and purpose. Christopher often watched from a distance, his eyes full of admiration. One evening, a teenage girl stayed behind. She had no home to go to. Mia gave her a room upstairs and told her, "Sweet Hope has space for more than just bread." Christopher, too, changed. Though wealthy beyond measure, he had always lived in quiet solitude. But through Mia, he found family. He began investing not in stocks, but in community kitchens, women-led businesses, and shelters. The couple donated anonymously to dozens of causes, letting the work speak louder than names. At a gala 6 months later, Victor Langston tried to approach Christopher with an apology. Christopher listened politely, then said, "An apology is hollow if it doesn't change the way you treat people." Victor never got a second chance. Weeks later, Sweet Hope expanded. A small reading corner was added, free coffee was served on Sundays to the homeless, and the walls were painted with murals of hope, contributed by local children. Mia no longer stood alone at her booth. She now led community workshops, teaching young women how to bake, how to build, and how to believe. And every time someone asked if she really was the woman in that video, she'd just laugh gently and say, "Yes. But not because I was defended. Because I finally learned how to stand tall." Never judge someone by what they wear, where they stand, or what little they own. Often, those with the softest voices carry the strongest hearts. And sometimes, love isn't loud. Sometimes, it's just a quiet presence that stands beside you, when the whole world watches.